where are you going in life? Which direction is your life headed in? Are you being tossed about, or can you see your preferred future out in front of you of where you want to go? In essence, do you have a vision for your own life? Individuals have vision, but so do organizations, and it's important that we know where we're going in addition to who we are and why we are here. So that's why that even after a 6-week hiatus, we are continuing to cast a fresh vision for our faith community. And we are mainly pulling from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. Now, 6 weeks ago, whenever we were together, I was imploring you to read 1 Corinthians. It's not that long. There's a lot of great stuff in there. Did you do it? And if you did do it, do you remember it from how far away we are removed from it now? Well, regardless if you did it, regardless if you remember it, I want to catch you up on the things that we've talked about so far, and then we'll get to where we're going today. And so Paul lays out all of this different conflict that the community in Corinth is going through, and then he has to get to how he is going to relate to the people there in the midst of all of this conflict. And so in the midst of all of that conflict, here is Paul's method of operation. He says, I have become all things to all people so that I could save some by all possible means. Now this is a verse worth remembering. People memorize John 3:16, for God so loved the world. It's worth memorizing that one. And people memorize, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13, I don't know, call me out if that's wrong. But this one is worth memorizing as well, because this is a skill that's needed today. If you were writing this today and talking about Paul today, you might even say that he code switches, that he knows how to navigate in different contexts. And so much in the same way that Paul is all things to all people, we are also all things to all people. If you ask me to put into a simple statement who the people of Wayne here are, it would be all things to all people. Because this church has a unique ability to hold people together who come from lots of different backgrounds, even different faith backgrounds. Some people are in relationships with people of different faiths. We've got people here with different countries of origin, people here who speak different primary languages, and people here who see the world in many different ways. And yet, we've somehow found a way to stay together, to worship God together, to sit in the same pew together. Yes, we can be all things to all people. And again, this is a skill so necessary in our world today, because our world needs adaptability, our world needs flexibility, and our world needs contextualization. In essence, our world also needs us to be able to change. And so this place is a place that is changed. We are changed. This statement comes from the 15th chapter of Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, and I did kind of tongue-in-cheek reference it in the opening, but nonetheless, in order for us to be able to get to where God is leading us, we do need to have the ability to change to where God is leading us today. And again, I would say that this congregation possesses a unique ability to do so, to be quick to adapt, to be flexible, to be open to whoever God brings our way, and sometimes to whatever God throws our way. We are changed. So that's where we've been in our journey through 1 Corinthians. Now we're going to fast forward to the final chapter of 1 Corinthians, and we're going to look at this charge that Paul gives the Corinthians before he leaves them, something that they are to do in the meantime before that he can travel to get to where they are. So here it is. Concerning the collection of money for God's people, you should do what I have directed the churches in Galatia to do. On the first day of the week, each of you should set aside whatever you can afford from what you earn, so that the collection won't be delayed until I come. Then, when I get there, I'll send whomever you approve to Jerusalem with letters of recommendation to bring your gift. If it seems right for me to go too, they'll travel with me. All right, so here is Paul's encouragement for the Corinthians to do the exact same thing that he has already instructed the Galatians to do in terms of how they express their generosity. And so there's some specifics in there related to the Corinthians, but there's some timeless truths in verse 2 that are just as applicable to us today as they were to the church in Corinth 2,000 years ago. So we're going to focus on the second verse. I'm going to read it one more time. On the first day of the week, each of you should set aside whatever you can afford from what you earn so that the collection won't be delayed until I come. So let's break this down a little bit. It starts out like this. Paul says, on the first day of the week. So that's Sunday, the Lord's Day, today, as long as you're watching this live, the day whenever people who follow Jesus gather together. And what are we supposed to do on the first day of the week? Each of you should give whatever you can afford from what you earn. All right, this is a little helpful piece in the middle of this, because Paul is only encouraging us to be able to do what we can actually do. Not something that is wildly just impossible, but to do what we can do, what each of us can afford from whatever we earn. And so drawing from that, I suppose then, if you aren't earning, you aren't bound to be giving, but nonetheless I would include sales and investments in this. But this is a nice sort of leveling of the playing field from whatever you can earn, because each of us has something that we can do. We might not all be able to afford giving $1 million. We might not even be able to afford giving $1,000, but we all have something that we as individuals with unique gifts and skills and situations, are able to do. And so, consistently, what Scripture lifts up as something that we can all afford to do is the tithe. You can call it the 1/10 offering. You can call it giving a tenth of what you got. You can call it 10%. What Scripture consistently lifts up is the tithe. Oftentimes, people will ask me a question that I'm unaccustomed to getting from elsewhere. People will say, how much does it cost to join this church? The simple answer is nothing. There's no requirement there, but even though we might not make a requirement, God still has expectations on us. And again, consistently throughout Scripture, God's expectation is the tithe. But again, what's nice about it is that we all have a 10%. And it's not going to be the same for each of us, and that's okay, because it's what fits each and every single one of us as individuals. And so, I'm sure that some of you have done this before. Some of you have gone way above and beyond the tithe before. But as we look to the new year and we set our priorities for the new year, might you consider making this a priority? Try it out. The prophet Malachi says, put me to the test, put the Lord to the test in this, and see if I don't rain down abundant blessings on you. Because what people have found whenever they begin to tithe is that they really don't miss it. I know 10% sounds like a huge chunk, but once you make it a priority, right up there with your mortgage or your rent and your bills, once you put it right at the top and give it to God first, you won't even miss it. I guarantee you that much. In fact, you will find others who are in your organization who you know are earning the same thing as you, and they will be operating from more of a mindset of scarcity than you are. You will feel more abundant than they do, even though you're only functioning on 90% and they're functioning on 100%. Again, try it. I promise you that you will have more than enough. And I'm not going to encourage you to do anything that I won't do personally. So, give it a shot as we progress on. But there's an important so what that finishes out this verse, so let's round it out. So that the collection won't be delayed until I come. All right, so if do you spend money? You probably do, I imagine. Now, do you wait until you've got a financial need to go out and look for a job? Surely not. Surely you get a job so that you can meet all of your financial obligations. You don't wait until an emergency arises to address that situation, but no, you plan ahead. You get ready for that thing, and it's the same way with this collection. You don't wait until there's an urgent, dire need, but you just build this in to your regular way of living. It's then just simply a part of life. And in terms of a life of faith, it's right up there with any other spiritual discipline. Generosity gets thrown into the same boat as prayer and Bible study and worship and service. Now, if you had a friend who said, I follow Jesus, but I don't pray, I leave that to someone else will pray for me, you would probably look at them a little funny, right? But this is the sort of thing that we do with generosity. We make excuses. We think it's for someone else. We forget that it's a part of discipleship. It's a part of following Jesus, just like prayer, just like Bible study, just like fasting, just like service, just like the worship that we are gathered together to do today. It's one among many spiritual disciplines, and it's just got to be a part of our everyday walk with the Lord. And so we could continue to elaborate on Paul's little bit of encouragement here for the Corinthian church as they seek to make their collection. However, there's honestly not a whole ton of encouragement here. Paul kind of lays out to the church in Corinth that they should get ready, they should collect an offering, they should do so regularly every time that they gather on the first day of the week, but he doesn't really give them a lot of why behind it, why they should give, with the exception of that one little verse. And this works for some people. For some people, all you have to do is say, we're taking an offering, and they're ready to go. For others, you've got to get to the why behind it. Why? Where's the money going to go? What are we going to do with that collection? Well, apparently, the Corinthians found themselves in that place because in Paul's second letter to them, he has to devote significantly more into encouraging them to be generous. There's really just the 4 short verses here in 1 Corinthians. In 2 Corinthians, there's 2 whole chapters, chapter 8 and chapter 9. Obviously, we don't have the time to read those two chapters in their entirety today. I would encourage you to do so after this. But right now, we can hit the high points, including how Paul begins and ends those 2 full chapters for the Corinthians to be generous. And it's kind of our vision statement for the day. Here's how Paul begins and ends that encouragement. He says, we are rich. We are rich. Stick with me for a second. Just hold on for 1 minute. We are in Radnor Township. I've pointed out the signs to you before. I hope you see them whenever you're driving around town, but we are the best of the main line. Now, being the best can mean different things, but consistently, people think the best in maybe services provided. We've got the best school district in the state. That's not just like a personal opinion, but like literally we were ranked number 1 here in Radnor Township. And people think of those who live here as being the best in being wealthy. That's just kind of the reputation that comes with this place. And let me show you what I mean, how serious I am about this. Whenever I came to this church, I was given a list of goals to fulfill once I got here. And again, sometimes it's helpful to know the why behind there. And so I asked the district superintendent, who was here 3 weeks ago, Evelyn. I asked DS Evelyn, my direct supervisor, exactly where these goals came from. Because they were all great goals for church vitality. However, I just kind of wanted to know where they originated. Were they with the denomination? Were they with this church? And she responded essentially, that they were general goals from the conference, goals that they were putting on every congregation, and so they were largely the same across conference churches, with one exception. In terms of generosity, she said, well, you're going to Wayne, and so I bumped up that generosity figure significantly. You should be able to be very generous there at Wayne. So like it or not, this is your reputation. Whenever people think of Wayne, they think of this. Is this where you are? I think sometimes we need to be realistic about exactly who we are. Some of us are in this space. Others of us aren't quite in this space of being thought of as uber wealthy. And so let's look at that encouragement directly from the lips of Paul, how he begins and how he ends those two chapters, encouraging the Corinthians to be generous. First up, while they were being tested by many problems, their extra amount of happiness and their extreme poverty resulted in a surplus of rich generosity. And then he concludes it very similarly by saying, you will be made rich in every way so that you can be generous in every way. Such generosity produces thanksgiving to God through us. So we are rich, pause for dramatic effect, in generosity. Which means that you don't have to be wealthy, but we all have something to give. And whenever we all come together and we all do what God is calling each and every single one of us to do, we can do some amazing things together. Some will write the flashy checks and others won't. Some will be scraping together that last little bit that they're able to give, but God looks on all of us the same whenever we act in generosity based on what is proportionate to us in our individual context. All right, so it was actually 1 year ago this Sunday that we made commitments to our Generation to Generation capital campaign. This is the capital campaign whereby we have already completed work on the columns out front, the flat roof over there, the steeple, and all of the white trim that you see outside. In addition to that work, we are nearing the end of the completion to brand new boilers. We are close to making commitments to new doors, and soon we will be looking at new windows. That's a lot of work that's happening rapidly thanks to your generosity. Now, for some, last year was the right time to make a commitment, and so if that's you, keep the faith. Remember that it's a 3-year campaign. I was talking to one among many individuals who was pouring a lot of time and energy into this campaign last fall to present it to all of us well. And that person said, "Oh, I can really breathe a sigh of relief when this is all over." I had to remind that individual that it is a 3-year long campaign, so don't forget about it. If you've already made a commitment, keep the faith. If last year wasn't the right year for you, might this year be the right time for you? Whether you were here last year, whether you are new to this faith community this year, we can use everyone's help to ensure that all of these projects are completed in a timely fashion at a high level with as minimal debt as possible. Now, in addition to those commitments being taken last year, this is, now that we're in November, this is typically the time whenever we make annual commitments to how we're going to be generous to the church next year with the annual budget. This was kind of a special year because we typically make these commitments in November. However, the church leadership and staff that were involved in this process wanted me to be here for this, and I wanted to be here for this as well. And so we tried to bump it up to October, but Bryn got bumped up even earlier than October to September. And so we tried, but we still kind of crossed paths on this. And look, I understand that just because October might have been the best time for the church, and we thought me as well, doesn't necessarily mean that it was the perfect time for you. And so if October wasn't the right time for you to make your annual commitment, might November be the right time to do so? to fund mission and ministry as we go into the next year. It was not only a year ago that we made commitments to the capital campaign. It was also about a year ago that we were having some chats leading up to the capital campaign and whenever we were making our commitments. And so if you were part of any of those gatherings, this is probably not a surprise to you, but it's worthwhile to give an update. Now, whenever we were having those chats, Rochelle and I were sharing the vulnerable fact that even though some of us were meeting for like the very first time, in some of those gatherings, we were sharing the vulnerable fact that we wanted to be generous to this capital campaign, even though after 11 years of marriage, admittedly 8 of which one or both of us were in grad school, that we were starting to see the writing on the wall that maybe biological children just weren't in the plan for us. And so we had been pursuing fostering and adopting, talking to people that we knew, seeing which one would be right for us. And in fact, we even had a deadline on our calendars that if we weren't pregnant by a certain date, that we were going to turn in that paperwork. The only trouble is that just before that deadline, we got word that we would be moving here to Wayne, which again is no trouble. After all, this is the best of the main line, and we've loved every moment of being here over this past year and a half. But we did recognize that right in that time of moving over an hour away, of not being super close to any family or friends, really not having a support system, probably wouldn't be the right time to be fostering or adopting. And so we put that plan on hold, at least for a time, and we decided that even though that process is very expensive, we were going to focus on being generous to the Generation to Generation campaign instead in 22 and 23 and beyond. But something interesting happened. Because of our unique ability as a family who had sold a house. We could take that 3-year campaign and make it a 1-year campaign and just fulfill our commitment right off the bat. But as soon as we wrote that check, as soon as we finished fulfilling our commitment, we got pregnant. You can give God a hand for that. I know I want to. As soon as we fulfilled our commitment, we got pregnant. Look, I'm not trying to give you some sort of prosperity gospel theology that if you just give enough, you'll have all of your wildest dreams fulfilled. You'll have health and wealth and really anything else that you can dream of. That's not what I'm trying to do, but what I've found is that whenever you take a leap of faith, God is faithful and God provides. Whenever you step out, God provides. And so if you believe that, I want you to say that with me. Can you say God provides? God provides. I really want you to say that with me. Say it with me again. God provides. Whenever we don't know where else to turn, God provides. Whenever we don't know what else to do, God provides. Whenever we have exhausted all of the possibilities that we see in front of us, God provides. Whenever we don't know what else to do, and it seems like there is no way, God provides. And friends, whenever we are rich in generosity, that's right, God provides. And so the truth is that we don't always believe this, or at least we don't act like we believe it. And so please join me in confessing our sin before God and each other.